Hey, it's Mike Hambright. Welcome back for another exciting Flip Nerd VIP show. Today I have with me Frank Cava, who is a highly experienced real estate investor that's done over 3,000 deals. He's an active investor, mentor, and coach, has a lot to teach others. Today we're going to focus on raising private money, and Frank has a topic he calls a 37-second elevator pitch to raise money. And before we get started, though, let's take a moment to recognize our featured sponsor. RealtyMogul.com is an online marketplace for real estate investing, connecting borrowers and capital from accredited and institutional investors. Get a rehab loan fast and close in as little as 10 days. Rates start as low as 9%. We'd also like to thank National Real Estate Insurance Group, the nation's leading provider of insurance to the residential real estate investor market. From individual properties to large-scale investors, National Real Estate Insurance Group is ready to serve you. Please note, the views and opinions expressed by the individuals in this program do not necessarily reflect those of FlipNerd.com or any of its partners, advertisers, or affiliates. Please consult professionals before making any investment or tax decisions, as real estate investing can be risky. Hey, Frank, welcome to the show.
Mike, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Good
Yeah, glad you're on. So, you've done a ton of deals, man.
I guess so. I have, yeah.
When I introduce people, sometimes I say this is an experienced investor, and they haven't usually done as many deals as you've done. So I inserted the word highly experienced in front of yours. I don't know if that's the right thing to do, but you've got a lot of great knowledge, and it's always good talking to people that have a lot of experiences to share. But for those that don't know you, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your background?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks for the opportunity. I grew up in a construction family, and I actually went to work for a home builder out of college. And at the age of 29, I became a vice president. So we were doing like 250 to 400 deals a year. And this is both land development, sales, and construction of houses. So my experience is in the billions with real estate coming out of the ground, and deliverables with both product and sales. Yeah. In 2009, at the absolute worst time in real estate, I said, screw it. If I can figure out a way to make money in this market, I can make money in any market. So I quit my cushy 9-to-5 job that paid me a fortune, and I started an investment company. And I started with what I knew the best, which is fixing and flipping properties. I started off with 1 or 2 at a time, and then as we grew, we were doing upwards of 20 of those at any given time. We've grown into different segments as well. We have a wholesale branch. We'll close 10 wholesale deals this month, and we have a rental portfolio as well. And I've been doing this for so long, folks, I'm sure just like yourself, come up to me and say, hey, can you show me how to do this? Yeah. So I started a small following with a coaching consulting group as well. Yeah.
So in terms of, is there a certain geography you focus on?
I live in the Central Virginia region, so just outside of the D.C. suburbs. We service Central Virginia and Richmond is most of where we do our business.
Okay. So what do you think about, talk a little bit about being a developer before this. I have some good friends that are, custom builders, and they've really struggled with getting into rehabbing because, especially the custom guys, because they want to overdo everything,
Sure.
And you got to be careful, to do that. But talk a little bit about how you kind of bridge the gap and how you think your development background maybe helped or hindered, what you're doing today.
The development background didn't help me at all with what I do now. What I say really helped was just learning how to study a market. So if you really look at the market from like 2000 to 2000, and let's just call it 2008, where it was blown up everywhere. In 2000, there was kind of that ramp up period. And what people started to do is they really started to overbuy houses. So you saw the McMansions and all that stuff. And what I really learned is that we serve the market. We don't create the market. The market's going to tell you what it wants. So thankfully, in my experiences and travels, I worked in several different markets, 2 different states, and I really saw the difference between something that was right next to Washington, D.C. versus something that was 2 hours away. It's completely different. Yeah. So because of that, you really start to learn what your buyer wants. And the biggest takeaway for me is being able to study a market, look at what is in that market that actually does sell and the market is buying, and data can help you really understand that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And once you do that, you dive into the marketplace and you provide what that market wants. The least expensive flip we've done since I've been on my own I think it was roughly around 80 grand. The most
Yeah.
expensive was over 700 grand.
Hmm.
Those are completely different kind of houses.
Sure.
So you have to really understand what each market wants in order to deliver something that the market's going to accept and buy.
Yeah, you know what was interesting for me when I first started in Dallas in this market, I really like the median price point here is about 130, 140,000, and I really didn't want to rehab under 100,000. I would tell people I don't rehab under 100,000 because I knew I would probably overdo it. Because when I started, and I've evolved on this now, we do a lot more of not totally knocking a house out, just making it a great value for the next person. It depends on what part of town that house is in. But I remember my first deal that I retailed, and we put it out at like 79.9 or something like that. And I wasn't even particularly happy with it. Like, we didn't put granite in it. We didn't do all the bells and whistles. And I remember somebody came, and that was early on. We had some open houses and stuff like that. I don't do any of that anymore. But I remember somebody came in, and you would have thought they walked into the Taj Mahal. I mean, they were like, oh, wow, look how nice this is. And I'm thinking, it really kind of hit home that if you find that market and you know how to serve that person, I think a lot of real estate investors, especially newbies, they want to knock everything out and do it the way that they would like the house to be themselves if they lived in it. And it just took some time to realize, not even at the entire market level, in the neighborhood level, getting in to figure out what does somebody expect at this level.
Right.
And yeah.
What you said is very important. We're not moving into these houses, so our personal tastes and opinions don't matter.
Right.
What's really important is being able to read the tea leaves and kind of see what people in this price point, in this segment, in this particular neighborhood, what they want.
Yeah.
When I first started doing this, I did all that. I would pull the comps and look at the selection, be like, all right, granite or not granite or vinyl floors or whatever it is in your market.
Right.
We've gotten big enough now where I have a team of designers that does that for us. So they literally will spec it all, and then before we start a house, we'll talk through it, make sure it all fits into the budget. But it's very much predicated by what's in the marketplace, not what I like.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I know that one of the bigger challenges a lot of real estate investors have is having enough funding and capital to do their deals, and in fact, it's a hindrance for a lot of real estate investors. And you've become an expert at that. So, do you want to talk a little bit about why you use private capital, or why those listening should consider private capital, and then maybe talk a little bit about how to find it?
Be happy to. The upside of the fix and flip game is you can cash really big checks. On the small side, it'll be 15 to 30 grand, but we've cashed checks at north of $75,000 for doing one deal. So I like those big elephant kills, essentially. You get the really, you have to chase a lot of little deals. You can do one or two and you can really have a sizable income.
Right.
So that is one of the reasons I like this segment of the business. I started, thankfully, I had some seed capital on my own. And I started off just kind of bootstrapping, which means self-funding all the deals. I kind of did it backwards. I then went to a bank and found capital. And I kind of realized with banks, there's some benefit. Interest rates are lower, but there's fees, and it takes a little bit of time. And as I started getting into this more and more, I actually found some hard money folks that were out there. And some of them are loan sharks, man. You do not want to deal with some of these guys.
Yeah.
They charge a ton of points and a ton of interest. But what I've been able to find is some people that are just looking to deploy some money that want good returns. Yeah. So what I find beneficial of it is if you find a good private money person, they're flexible. They can be really fast in how fast they can get you the money. You don't have to pay for a bunch of points and nonsense fees that a bank will charge, and you don't have to go through a bunch of appraisals. So I like it to kind of have a well balance. I've got my money in, I've got bank money, but I also like to have some private capital as well.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, one of the benefits of bank money usually is it's a revolving line, so you could put it back in and stop paying interest. I know there's some folks, I don't know specifically what you're doing, when they raise private capital, they're responsible for the money the whole time they have it. One of the challenges, I've talked about this before, in my experience, I could raise a lot more capital than I need. Yeah. But how do you keep those investors, those potential lenders, happy if you can't? Because a lot of folks, if you were to go out to somebody and raise even $1 million from somebody or more, they would say, great, when do you want it? They kind of want it all deployed, right? But when you say, oh, you'll lend me $1 million or $3 million, okay, that's awesome, but I only need 100,000 right now. Can you just put the rest of it in a savings account for me and let it sit there until I need it? How do you kind of manage those expectations and manage like not over raising capital?
Sure. One of the things that I really teach is it's no different than any other relationship. You need to set proper expectations. If you found somebody that just wants to hand you $3 million with no track record, please call me and give me their number. I'd love to work with them. But most people want to start a little bit slower from what I've learned.
Yeah.
I've got a private investor that I've got almost $2.5 million deployed with at the moment. And we started off with a $190,000 relationship. So what I would tell you is set expectations that are very realistic. Tell them, how long you're going to need the money, and set expectations that you can deliver to, and then do what you say you're going to do. If you tell them that it's going to take you 3 or 4 months, if you think it's going to take you 3 or 4 months, tell them it's going to take you 6. If you think you're going to be able to sell a house for a certain price, maybe come in a little bit under that, so that way you can kind of surprise them on the upside and show you what you really did. So what I would tell you is be conservative, set realistic expectations, and then as you start to grow, just be honest. Say, look, I'm doing 3 right now. I need enough money to fund one of them. If this goes well, I'd be real happy to put you into another couple of deals. Yeah. And to answer your question specifically, if you can only do one deal, you may have to pay more in interest. Right. But leverage it. If you can do 5 deals at a time and they have $1 million in the marketplace versus 100,000, and they want 12% on 100,000, well, 12% on 100,000 over the course of a year is 12 grand. But if you can get them 8% on $1 million, that's 80 grand. So if you do the math on that, you might be able to get a lower interest rate. You're paying less per deal, but at the same time, they're getting a much bigger return.
Sure,
so
sure.
It's all about leveraging and negotiating.
Yeah, yeah. Well, talk a little bit about some of the strategy you have, where to find folks, and how you talk to them, the pitch you give, some of that information.
I'd be happy to. So the most important thing to know is know your business and be able to speak very educatedly about what it is that you do on a regular basis. And if you know that and you know some of the key stats that you have in your business, it really helps you. Sometimes you go in purposefully to raise money, and sometimes just by simply speaking and talking about what you do, you may pique the interest of someone who say, oh, you know what, I'd be interested in doing something along those lines. And that's some of what I've been able to do in my business and how I've been able to bring in investors, is just simply talk about, hey, this is what we do, these are the results. And, we have some private investors that we work with on a regular basis, and we're always looking for more. And just by simply pitching it that way, if they're interested, they're going to ask you some follow-up questions.
Right, right. And in your experience, where does the average person find these folks at? Is it at the baseball field while you're watching your kids, country club?
It usually starts with friends and family.
Yeah.
The 3 biggest investors in my business are me, and then my brother and my dad. Outside of those 2 people, it starts to go to kind of like concentric circles. It usually starts with maybe like an uncle or somebody like that, and then it usually goes to someone outside of a friend or a friend of a friend. Right now in our business, we have about 10 people that lend us money privately, and it's all through concentric circles. And basically what I'm talking to you about today is just speaking in a way when someone, you're at dinner, you're having a conversation, what do you do? Don't botch that. Give them a good pitch of what it is you do. Practice, be ready. And you never know. Someone will come up to you afterwards, tap in the show, and say, hey, I'm really interested in learning about that. Can we go get a cup of coffee? And sometimes that happens.
Yeah, yeah. So do you have any examples of what you would say? It's funny because I struggle with this myself. I wear a few different hats, So when somebody says, what do you do? I used to say, I'm a real estate investor.
Right.
But now everybody's a real estate investor, right? So I'm like, but there's more to me than that. But I don't. Maybe I need to work on my pitch. Yeah. Any tips?
Yeah, I would say prep yourself. And I have something I can give you as a deliverable that your group with no experience can kind of build off of what it is that I have.
Yep.
But what I deliver is kind of this. I just say, in a nutshell, I have a team that finds me ugly houses. They're priced under market value. They bring them to me and I analyze them. If the deal makes sense, what we do is we add value to that house. We sell it quickly on the open market, and we improve communities one house at a time, and at the same time, make a nice chunk of money for ourselves, and we reward our investors. In the past 4 years, we've done more than 100 of these deals. Of the 100 we've done, 90% have sold in less than 30 days. we've made money on all of our deals, and we've repaid our investors exactly what we told them or even more. So I'm pretty picky because I've done over $1 billion in real estate through land development, sales, and construction. So I'm only looking for a real select type of person to be an investor. But if you know someone who's interested, please let me know.
Yeah.
And that's what I say. I mean, that's an outline. It's not always the same, but
right.
You can see it's relatively rehearsed, but at the same time, it just flows.
Yeah, you got to make that stuff sound natural.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, and why don't you talk a little bit about folks that don't have, haven't done $1 billion+ of deals and thousands of houses and stuff like that. Talk a little bit about, the newer investor that is trying to get in this business. And of course, everybody knows, we're not going to sugarcoat it. It's harder to raise money if you don't have experience. But nonetheless, people can, still find it from friends and family. They're a little more tolerant maybe than an outside investor. But talk a little bit about what people would do if they're newer in the business.
So here's an asterisk, very, very important asterisk to the conversation. The concentric circles usually starts with family and friends. The last thing you want to do is put important relationships in peril because of loss of money. So what I would tell you is if you don't know exactly what you're doing, find someone that can coach you or walk you through the process so you don't lose money over yourself or your friends and family.
Yeah.
But if you feel comfortable that you know how to do this, it's actually pretty easy. Getting money doesn't necessarily depend on you as a human at all. The way that you set the deal up is that the money is tied to the property. So if you have no money, you don't have credit, you don't have anything, if you find a really good deal, they're going to either give you a deed of trust or a mortgage, depending on the state. And if God forbid something should happen and you get struck by lightning, they can then go back and get their value out because that house is securing the money. And this is really easy to set up. So that's the number one step, is find a property that has value. The number two thing to do with it is to not overbuild, not make it more complicated. Some houses literally need lipstick, and very quickly you need to be able to kind of turn those things around. Some houses need major renovations.
Right.
If you're going to do a major renovation, you need to build a good, strong team around you that is going to do the work. And then if you're trying to raise capital, if you have a contractor that's done things that you know or you can show examples of, you can bring in your money person and say, look, here's the property, here's the contractor that's going to be doing the work. I'm simply going to be the conduit that makes sure all of this happens. And then the last piece is, how do you sell it? So you have to find a realtor that's really, really good at knowing the market. Now, I've done tons of these. I've got great contractors. I've got great realtors. I pay under market value for everything. Your first deal, you're probably not going to have that leverage, but you can put that team together and you can really satisfy the concerns of the investor because you've got a team of experienced people around you.
Right. So can you talk a little bit about, this is going to differ significantly depending on, I know somebody that borrows money from their family at 0%, so not everybody's going to get that, right? But what type of rates could you expect from private money, relative to, hard money and bank money and stuff like that?
Perfect. I'm going to answer all of them. I've got bank money out right now. It's at 5.5%. It's 5.5% interest only, and it's on a revolving line. So I've got more than $1.5 million like that. So I can pull it in and out real easy. I can refi those deals into permanent loans if I have a rental that I want to hold on to. So, but 5.5% to 6% in today's market is what commercial money is.
Yeah.
Now, if you have a job and you can get upwards, it's somewhere between 6 and 10 loans you can get home loans on. You might be able to get better terms, but I don't have a job. I'm self-employed, so I can't go to Wells Fargo and get a loan. I've got to go to a local bank. People always ask me, I don't know if you get this, Mike, but people always ask me, what kind of bank should I go to? Like the people with national commercials that like advertising the Super Bowl or that. But the small regional banks, the guys that have 5 to 15 branches that have a commercial division, those are the banks you go to.
Absolutely, yeah.
So 5.5%, 6% is there. If you go to like a hard money lender is usually going to get somewhere between 2 and 6 points. So if you borrow $100,000, points means you got to pay $2,000 to $6,000 just for the opportunity to borrow the money. And then they want usually between 12 and 16% interest, which is a ton of, you're giving up, you're going to do the math at the end of the job, and they're going to make more money than you because of the fact that you're paying such high rates.
Right.
What I typically negotiate is somewhere between 10 and 12%, and as low as 8. So somewhere between 8 and 12. And
Mm-hmm.
could I nickel and dime and get people down a little bit lower? Maybe, but I want to be fair. They're taking a little bit of risk. It's not a traditional instrument. So giving them somewhere between 8 and 12%, I think is a very fair return. And I found people that are very interested in lending at those levels.
Yeah, yeah, and in my experience too, with bank money, which I have some that sounds very familiar, sounds much like what you have there, but typically they're not going to finance 100% of the deal. Is that your experience as well? For folks that, I mean, truth be told, a lot of folks use hard money because it's easy, it's fast, and they if they bought the house right, they may be able to get in with no money out of pocket for purchase and repairs.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm a pro at this, and we have our own money.
Right.
But in some instances, I want to grow the business. And one of the reasons I use private money is because I don't have to have my own equity in those deals. The
Right.
equity's in the deal itself. So you
Right.
just come out of pocket with 40 grand to buy a $200,000.
Right, right. But with a bank, my question is, with a bank though, with commercial loans, you're typically going to be, they're only going to do 75, 80, 85% of cost, right?
That's right.
Yeah,
Every bank will be
because the
different.
way that banks, I mean, from a regulation standpoint, they're required to consider the cost as value, even though as real estate investors that are buying at a deep discount, you know that that's not true, but that's just how they tend to evaluate it.
That's right. And they got to protect themselves. They have a board of trustees, and they have regulators, and they have the
Right.
government that's going to inspect them, where a private lender doesn't have any of that.
Yeah, yeah. So, what do you think about for folks that maybe can borrow money at the types of rates you're talking about, and then relending that back out, kind of making a market with hard money? You have, I mean, if you have access to that fund, those funds, and you know that hard money is being lent out at 14 and 4 or something like that. With your experience, have you considered getting into the hard money business?
I haven't. I've got enough going on right now. Also, becoming a lender isn't something that really is overly appealing.
Yeah.
We purchased a couple of notes, but becoming a lender is not something that's on the radar.
It's a whole nother ball game for sure.
Yeah, what I would tell most people is everybody likes to do like 100 things at a time. What I'm a real big fan of is find something you're good at and really master it. And I talked in the beginning about the different buckets of business that we have. It's not just me. We've got a whole team of people in here.
Right.
I've got someone who completely runs wholesale. We have a company that completely runs our rentals. And I can't do all that stuff well. So, you know what I mean? If I'm going to
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's easy to get spread thin. So if you have a wholesale business as well, is that are you primarily wholesaling stuff that you just don't want to touch as a rehab, doesn't fit your model, or maybe it's not in the right part of town or things like that? How do you decide what you wholesale versus rehab?
One of the reasons that I got into this business and set it up the way that I set it up is in 2009, I worked for one of the largest home builders in America. And they were getting just napalmed because they had one thing that they did. They built houses and they provided mortgages, but it was all around one segment of business. Mm-hmm. And you're going to say, well, you're talking out of the other side of your mouth. You just said do one thing. True, but I wanted to have a couple of different tentacles into the marketplace. So we have a wholesale business that provides income every single month. Those quick, easy deals, we close somewhere between 6 and 12 of those every month. So that's somewhere between 50 and 150 grand that just comes in that kind of takes care of overhead. Your footprint can be a lot larger with a wholesale deal because you don't physically need to inspect those houses. You can have someone run out and just look at it. So we wholesale deals all across the state. Our fix and flip deals are in about a 60-mile envelope, and that's it. It's about 5 miles wide and about 60 miles long. And we know contractors and we know everybody that's in that marketplace. And if something goes wrong with a fix and flip deal, I can close up my computer and I can be the one farthest away in less than an hour. Right. So that's kind of what our marketing is. In addition, some places we don't want to wholesale, or in some instances we have enough enough fix and flip deals going on that we just want to take that house and just sell it in the marketplace. Yeah. We wholesale good deals, but some of them are rentals, some of them are fix and flips, but we can't buy everything. So that's kind of what that segment's there for.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Frank, if talk a little bit about some of the mentoring and coaching type things you do, and if folks want to learn more about what you're doing, how they find you.
Yeah, that'd be great. You can hear through the quick conversation we're having here. we can add value, and I can personally add value in a lot of segments, not lending, but the other segments of the real estate market.
Right.
And there's two places to find us. One is my name. It's frankcavacoaching.com. And you kind of teed me up nicely in the beginning. I have a website called theexperiencedinvestor.com. It's experience with just an X, no E. And both of those two places is where you can find us. We offer consulting, monthly consulting, and we have a handful of students that we actually bring through an entire process and say, if you make a sizable investment in us, in 6 months, we'll show you, 4 to 6 times those returns.
Yeah. Awesome. Frank, thanks so much for joining us today. Appreciate the information.
It was my pleasure. It was great to be here.
Awesome. We'll see you around.
Thanks so much.
Are you a member of FlipNerd.com, the most robust real estate investing platform in existence, where you can find off-market wholesale deals and great vendors literally in your market? You can get access to advice from experts and learn about local clubs and events right in your backyard. If not, please visit FlipNerd.com and register for a free account. You can register in less than a minute. It's pretty much the coolest site that's ever existed in the real estate investing industry, so get on over to FlipNerd.com.